So I'm gonna state this now, I have low expectations when it comes to YouTube rap. With the exception of like Marlon Crab having some great freestyles and Quadeca making, well, decent music, I don't have much interest in YouTube rap. KSI, Dax, Tom McDonald, like turn that shit off. I'm trying to listen to good music. Okay, maybe not good music, but you know what I mean. But as it so happens, one managed to stick out to me. Well, technically two, but we'll get into that can of worms another time. Due to not being a YouTube rapper in a traditional sense. More so, I think it would be more accurate to call this person a streamer turned artist. See Calliope Mori, she is a VTuber working under the idol group Hololive, despite everyone in Hololive being labeled as an idol. Almost nobody except their diehard fans actually give a shit about their music. What kind of music do they make? I don't know, fucking anime intro music. I'm just here for the funny stream clips. And as it just so happens, Calliope Mori is labeled as a rapper. Since I can't figure out what my Night Oshi GF is talking about, I decided to listen to the lean-sipping Grim Reaper cosplaying YouTube rapper, Calliope Mori. So,
is Calliope Mori a good rapper?
After giving all of her projects a listen, I can sorta throw her into the YouTube rapper category, but it's not that cut and dry, so let me go into more detail on what her music sounds like. I found that out because for research I went through her discography twice. Her general rap style has an obvious Eminem influence. I know that isn't saying a lot since that can encompass a lot of YouTube rappers. Now I'm not talking about halfway decent Slim Shady Eminem, but like post-rehab Eminem. You know, the type of Eminem where its fans equate syllables spoken per second as a measurement of good music, but I digress. There are a handful of times when Mori tries to rap beyond jogging pace, but the ensuing bars that come out have the same grace and nuance of someone falling down the stairs.
But wait, look at me now. Trying to get souls and I just found out how. Put up a shroud, stream for the crowd, play the game and the viewers skip out.
This is not to say that all of her tracks are dictionary speedruns. For the most part, her flows are steady yet unambitious. In terms of rap delivery, Mori has like two voices. It's either Tomboy GF or Moe Blob. For you normal people in the audience, that translates to somewhat aggressive rapping and cutesy high-pitched rapping.
I'm not asking for much, do me a favor and die.
Either way, these voices can definitely turn people away from her music due to both vocal styles just radiating cringe by simply existing. At some point, the energy she gives off seems overdone or way too in your face. But I have a feeling it's a side effect of playing a character. As a side note, her singing is pretty competent. I didn't know how much engineering plays a role in the sound of it, but it sounds good. Even on her earliest project, and it actually gets better when going through the discography. Honestly, I would just call her a pop artist. I mean, I guess it's appropriate if we remember the fact that she is, indeed, an idol. So, Mori's whole shtick is being an anime Grim Reaper, which kinda limits the range of subjects one can rap about, so I get that. The subjects you'll be able to talk about are gonna be pretty limited. However, besides a few exceptions, she tends to fall back on talking about the same subjects. You can expect to hear bars focusing on being a gangsta reaper, self-depreciation, addressing the haters, trademark, I'm better than other rappers, and the you thought I was a cutesy anime waifu but I'm secretly edgy type of bars. I'm not expecting Aesop Rock levels of creativity or songs about the prison industrial complex in America, but it's tiring to hear Mori recycle these bars from project to project. There are some cool sections where Mori gets into character and acts like a grim fucking reaper, or maybe she actually talks to herself in a non-braggadocious or self-deprecating way. Sometimes she actually says something pretty decent, but don't expect any super cool double entendres or anything that a deaf blind man can interpret. On the other hand, half of her lyrics are in Japanese, and for a monolingual gaijin like me, I can't understand. It's not that I don't like hearing Japanese, it's just that any nuance or meaning that can come from it, I feel, in a rapping context just doesn't hit the same way when translated. So I guess shout out to the people who actually speak Japanese who might enjoy this more. In terms of beat choice, they're definitely a mixed bag. For the most part, Mori kind of forgoes any normal sounding beats like this, or this. Instead, her production leans towards more electronic J-pop and even jazz swing influences. A little unconventional when it comes to hip-hop, but it's not impossible to incorporate its sound. As someone who's pretty familiar with electronic music and has a passing interest in any pop music, they're competently produced and in terms of mixing are pretty on point. For me, my enjoyment of Mori's beat selection is very subjective, and it probably won't surprise you that most of her beats aren't my cup of tea. On occasion, you get the straightforward hip-hop beat, and it just works. Imagine the look on my face when I heard her rapping over a rage beat, after hearing her rap over dubstep and electro swing beats like it's the early 2010s. Later on in the discography, we shift more towards J-pop and K-pop influences in the production, and the results vary between songs. It can range from listenable to way too overproduced. After listening to every project by her, it starts to get really boring and sometimes annoying. Calliope Mori's music, in a hip-hop sense, isn't insufferably bad, for the most part, but it isn't interesting enough to catch me listening to her music more than twice, and God forbid putting it on my playlist. For some people it may have some ironic enjoyment, but really it's just boring. I'm not sure how else to describe it, because it's not just the lyrics she recycles, it's just the general sound she has. It just goes over and over again. She barely does anything different from project to project. I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, but if it wasn't stable to begin with, you might have a problem. I have enough self-awareness to realize that I am not the specific audience for this type of hip-hop, or even this type of music in general. Maybe if you age me back 7 years when my music taste was just System of a Down and Eminem, maybe I would like this. Maybe if I were more tapped into VTuber culture or idol culture in general, I would have more appreciation for this. But as it stands, this kind of music just isn't for me. Sorry, listening to anime opening music isn't on my daily agenda. With this being her first effort, I won't be too hard on it. Deadbeats had a really interesting beat that didn't sound too overbearing while also maintaining a good energy. Mori also flowed pretty decently on it. Live Again also had a good piano-driven beat and is a decent closer to the EP. I didn't care too much about the first two tracks though. First contains a lot of lyrical tropes you'll hear through most of her work, with a corny beatboxing beat in the back, albeit with an 808. The same can be said about the second track here. This is probably my favorite Mori project out of the whole discography if we're comparing the ratio between songs I like and dislike. This is another EP-length project, and it's more of the same as the last project. I'll admit I didn't expect the swing beat on the first track, and that just hit me like a truck. I was legit dying of laughter and disbelief. And this won't be the last time she raps over a beat like this. Like, every time she uses this type of beat, I just get Justin Timberlake beatboxing type of vibes, and I hate it.
Stop.
Other than that, the other track of note I feel is Red, because it didn't make me want to cut my ears off. The beat was good, the singing is solid, but then again, it wasn't a rap track. The rest of the tracks here just kind of feel like white noise, because once again, we're retreading familiar ground already in like the second project. This is a remix album of the last EP, but with lo-fi beats. Now, this isn't actually interesting lo-fi, but more like a super commercialized version of lo-fi that sounds decently pleasant to listen to. If I had to compare it to something, think of that art style that a bunch of tech companies use that's supposed to look friendly but ends up looking super corporate. This doesn't mean I dislike the production on the album. In fact, I feel the beat change makes the slightly more wonky tracks a little more listenable. It also seems like the album was re-recorded to fit the new production, which I appreciate, because the more aggressive delivery on the original album on these beats would have made me just hate this album more. I'd still consider it below average, but at least it's better than the original album. On this album, for the most part, the pop elements start to take over the hip-hop elements, but the hip-hop elements linger in probably the most annoying way possible. This album is probably comparable to a modern K-pop album in sound. The rapping sticks out like a sore thumb when contrasted with the amount of singing on this album. Mind you, the singing is still pretty solid, but it's clear what this album is trying to be. I don't have any tracks in particular I like or dislike. It kind of hits this perfect equilibrium of being boring and nothing else. At this point of the discography, on my first time listening, I was fully checked out. She has recycled every formula and gone making passable music down to a science. I'm probably saying it's passable because every cringe bar, obnoxious beat, and every section of good singing has her music just sounding like white noise. So what is there to say about this album? We've transitioned back to normal sounding J-pop and swing beats and overall typical Mori production. What else? Scuffed Up Age is probably the only track I liked on the album. The beat slapped, the singing was actually pretty good and meshed well with the beat, and the rapping lyric-wise was still kinda cringe, but overall the song actually flowed well. So this is her most recent project, and for fuck's sake, I'm glad I'm at the end of this godforsaken discography. Sorry, I'm tired. So anyway, is there anything new or interesting that Mori has done on this album that didn't show up in a previous album? K-pop beats, check. On the opening track, no less? Yeah. Gratuitous Japanese, check. Addressing the haters, even tangentially, check. Jazz swing beat? Okay, yeah, you get the point. Okay, I won't act like there isn't anything new here because surprisingly, Mori decided to add a fuck ton of ingredients into her formula, and for the most part, it didn't trigger a dangerous chemical reaction. On Wanted Wasted, we have a Metal Gear Revengeance type beat that I like just because of that. I'm Greedy has a crazy sounding rage beat of all things, which kept me distracted from Mori's rapping, which is pretty much white noise at this point. Dance Past Midnight has a nice sounding 80s vibe to it as well. Hell, it doesn't even have a lot of rapping, which is a plus. If anything, this is my second favorite Mori project. It actually does something new and sticks the landing. Well, it breaks a leg on the landing, but you know what I mean. There's still a lot of rehashed stuff in this album, but at least there's enough of a pulse in the music to have me saying, hey, that's kinda interesting. Okay, I'm just realizing this in post. I forgot to talk about the singles, so I'll go through them real quick. This is all the shit that's on Apple Music, so if I miss any YouTube or Spotify exclusives, I'm sorry. This song is actually pretty good. I like the beat, and surprisingly there are no overt cringe bars, but the over-aggressive delivery kinda creeps in sometimes. If anything, that's the only thing keeping me from coming back to it. Overall, the song is chill and doesn't overstay its welcome. The singing is pretty great as well, but I guess that isn't really saying much. It's a normal Mori track. Next. The fact that the genre is labeled anime is pretty funny to me. Like, everything up to this point actually had a genre attached to it, and now we get slapped with the anime tag. At least it's appropriate to what the song sounds like. It does sound like an anime opening. Is it particularly interesting? No. Did I immediately want to skip it? No. There's a feature to break the song up from the rap verses, which still feel like a formality. I guess it sounds cool. Can't really understand it because it's all in Japanese, but whatever. Like, what can I say that hasn't already been said about Mori? The singing is good, rapping is kinda mid. I've always heard that this is a good Mori song, and you know what? I can agree. If anything, this sounds like a better version of Cursed Night. The beat is actually pretty gorgeous. That sax line in the chorus just activates all the neurons in my fucking brain. The lyrics are less in your face and actually have some abstraction to them, which it's a plus. Maybe I actually noticed the good in these slower tracks when it isn't right at the end of an album that already gave me ear fatigue. The rapping I'm not a biggest fan of, but that's expected, and of course the singing is pretty great. This is probably the only song I keep in rotation, because it's that good. Now from that high note, we're kinda ending on a neutral point. Again, pretty typical Mori track. Watame didn't add too much, but at least it blends well.
People taking lives, rocking knives and guns for being murdered, kinda still was in the ruins of hell. Could you salute?
So after all that, why did I subject myself to that? Well, besides the fact that I wanted to make a YouTube rap / VTuber themed video for a while, it's the YouTuber Brad Taste in Music that made me want to look into Mori's music in depth. I managed to catch a live stream of him just reviewing the Calliope Mori discography, and while my first impression was, yeah, it's cringe, I had a morbid curiosity to figure out why it was cringe. Also, since it's a live stream, and from what I've seen from his content, his opinions are more in the moment than actually listening to the music to see what's good. Basically, I just had the feeling that his reactions were played up to an extent for entertainment, and that Mori's music wasn't being given a fair shot. I always say I'm open-minded when it comes to music, but this whole discography kind of puts that to the test. That being said, is Calliope Mori a good rapper? Fuck no, baby! Is her music worth listening to? No, not really. Do I understand why people would enjoy this type of music? Yeah. Is it for me? No. If you fuck with this, more power to you. I gave her a fair shot, and the music's just kinda whatever. But then again, most of her fans are actually just live stream watchers, and that's probably more enjoyable than listening to the music. Now, if you would excuse me, I'll go back into hibernation and maybe do something fulfilling. Wait a minute, who's Demon Dust?